Today we're going to talk about just culture. Is your organization a just culture? In a just culture, learning is a top priority, and everyone in the organization, from executive leaders to frontline staff, is truly interested in understanding risk and making improvements to patient safety. Is your organization transparent? Would you describe it as a culture of robust reporting where individuals are encouraged and maybe even rewarded for reporting errors and near misses? In the aftermath of an adverse event, do involved staff participate in the analysis of the event and contribute to the redesign of systems to prevent recurrence? Have all managers and directors received a thorough education in just culture principles? And do they understand how to classify error and behavioral choices to determine appropriate accountability? Finally, how is just culture kept alive and reinforced? Is there planned education and ongoing communication to keep staff aware and prevent them from drifting back to old habits and behaviors? One of the most notable features of just culture is that it offers us insight into how to manage error by helping us classify behavior to determine appropriate accountability. Just culture moves us away from knee-jerk reactivity to a more measured and constructive approach to managing error, making it easier and safer for staff to report errors and near misses. And in this way, just culture fosters transparency in hospital culture. One of the biggest misconceptions of just culture is that we operate in a blissful, blame-free environment, free of consequence and accountability. And this just isn't the case. David Marks sets the record straight. Marks is an attorney, systems engineer, and the CEO of Outcome Engineering. He was the person who popularized the idea of just culture for application in high-risk industry. Marks explains that just culture is really about finding the middle ground or seeking the right place of accountability and responding to error in a measured and constructive way. When determining accountability, just culture does look at human behavior and the choices we make. Human behavior is classified according to 3 different levels of culpability: human error, at risk, and reckless behavior. Human error describes inadvertent error that results from just being human. These errors include common slip-ups and mistakes. It's like leaving an empty pot on a lit burner and discovering it 10 minutes later. We excuse this behavior and console the person who made the mistake because there was no real choice involved. It just happened. An example in healthcare might be an RN drawing up the wrong dose of the patient's medication. In the aftermath, we would console the nurse, and from there, we would likely focus on improving our process and preventing the incident from reoccurring. Perhaps through investigation, we learned that the involved nurse was asked a question while drawing up the medication. Recognizing that distraction threatens performance, we then decide to make the medication room a distraction-free zone and mandate that, barring an emergency, no one is permitted to interrupt a nurse when she's preparing medications. So in a just culture, the involved nurse is consoled. In a truly robust culture, she was involved in a debriefing and was also instrumental in making improvements to the system. Punishing the nurse's behavior or sternly advising her that she'd just pay better attention would not only be unfair, but unproductive. At-risk behavior involves deliberate choices in situations where either the risk is believed to be justified or where the risk is underappreciated. At-risk behavior is more common than you might think. In fact, all of us take risks every day. We drive slightly over the speed limit in order to get to work on time, believing that the end, or punctuality, somehow justifies the means, driving fast. At-risk behavior, unlike errors and reckless behavior, happens very frequently, and as it turns out, taking risks is a very human propensity. How it happens is explained by the concept of drift, where, as the name suggests, we humans naturally drift from an acceptable safe practice to unsafe behavior. Eventually, this unsafe behavior becomes the norm. This is also known as normalized deviance. As an example of drift, think about how you drove when you first got your license as compared to how you drive today. You might consider yourself to be a relatively safe driver, and yet you can easily recognize that you've drifted from those initial safe practices. Experienced drivers take all kinds of risk. We drive over the speed limit, occasionally glance at our cell phones, and fail to come to a complete stop. Why? Because we underappreciate the risk in our behavior and perceive some sort of benefit to doing what we're doing. In healthcare, there are numerous examples of at-risk behavior. One example, well known to nurses, is failing to conduct an independent double check for a high-risk medication. The Institute for Safe Medication Practices recently published an alert describing the drift associated with this independent double check. You can find this alert on our website in the Media Room Alerts section. As the authors explain, the independent double check was originally conceived as a fail-safe way to reduce medication error by having a second qualified person independently check the order to ensure the 5+ rights of medication administration. Unfortunately, in the busy world of healthcare, what happens all too frequently is that instead of the meticulous step-by-step independent review, the process is abbreviated to the point of being totally unsafe. Often it looks like this. Nurse A, preparing insulin for her patient, holds up a syringe for Nurse B, her colleague, announcing, "I've got 8 units of insulin for Mr. Smith." "Okay," says Nurse B, who confirms by quickly glancing at the order and entering her initials as proof of verification. Now, in this scenario, both nurses are aware of the policy and procedure requiring an independent double check for high-risk medications. They know it's important to check the 5 rights, and in fact, they review this policy and procedure annually. They might even enact it to fulfill an educational requirement. But here, well, they seem to underappreciate the risk, and they rush through the procedure. They might even question the utility of a ritual that, in their experience, never seemed to result in catching anything. Additionally, they're both so busy, and a double check is time-consuming. And this is the way things continue, until one day an observant manager takes note of our nurse's substandard double check. In a just culture, the manager would hold the nurses accountable for the breach. Both nurses must be coached and informed that the risk of bypassing the process was not and never is justified. But should this be the end of it? No. In a just culture, this incident should inspire further inquiry into why the choice was made in the first place, and begs other questions such as, just how prevalent is this behavior? How can we help staff better appreciate the risk of workarounds? Can we redesign and standardize our process so that nurses know exactly what a double check looks like? In a just culture, we hold staff accountable and coach them on improvement. We probe and ask questions to learn and improve. The ultimate question being, how can we make it easy for staff to do the right thing? Reckless behavior, our third category, is pretty easy to classify and usually something we can all easily agree on. Reckless behavior is any behavior that's grossly irresponsible and shows an obvious disregard for the safety of others. Driving at 100 miles per hour during a blizzard is a clear example of reckless behavior. In healthcare, reckless behavior is rare. A surgeon or a nurse showing up for work inebriated is a good example. We have zero tolerance for this type of behavior and would likely follow through with remedial or punitive action. Just culture is a rich and very important subject, and there's so much more to cover. Again, we can thank David Marks for his work on this subject. If you're interested in providing staff with further education, please contact your CAPAssurance consultant. Thank you.